Home. What makes a home? A home is something most of us enjoy. A place to kick up our feet at the end of the day. A place where families grow and make memories. Home is a place where we can get a restful sleep for the night and enjoy a nice reprieve from the troubles of the world around us. A place to enjoy our right to privacy and recharge. But a home is more than a residence we live in. It's also the community around us. It's the city or town we live in. It's the parks and the community centers. It's our friends and the people we went to school with. It's our downtown entertainment and festivals, cheering for our local sports team. It's the smile and a warm hello we give to someone we pass by on the street. Even when our lives and backgrounds look different, we all experience a shared community in some way. Our city is a home to call our own. There is something, though, that we are seeing an increase across our entire country. People experiencing homelessness is at an all-time high. After coming through a devastating pandemic, along with the economic strains associated with it, more and more people have been pushed further and further into instability, resulting in a significant increase in not only the unhoused population, but people struggling with their mental health, with people experiencing addictions as they try and cope with hopelessness and a world that seems to have forgotten them. Those privileges you and I enjoy, from a lock on the door to breakfast and a morning coffee, are nothing but a fading memory for some of our most vulnerable citizens. Not having that physical home to be in is life-shattering. But what about the community you belong in? The place you have built a life in? What happens to someone when instead of that friendly hello and a smile, you see faces filled with fear and disgust? You see people cross the road to get away from you. You hear people laughing at you, pointing at you. You hear untrue and cruel things said about you in public forums and from politicians and media outlets. You start to believe you don't belong. You start to believe your community is no longer a place to call my home. Where do we learn and develop our perceptions about vulnerable and unhoused people? Have you ever stopped to think why we believe what we do? Maybe it was one very valid, frightening, or negative experience that has caused you to paint every person experiencing homelessness with one stroke of a brush. Maybe it is simply a fear of the unknown or a lack of knowing where to start. Oftentimes, though, it comes from pervasive myths and untrue sentiments repeated over and over again in narratives about unhoused people. The reality is, often these myths are not only untrue, but they also actually fuel a drive to limit, relocate, or cut off vital services the unhoused population desperately relies on. They threaten the very existence of the services that offer the hope for someone that things may change. Let's explore some of those myths together and get the real story from the people who have lived it and work in it.
We hear on a regular basis that the downtown area is not the right place for emergency shelter services. They need to be downtown. They need to be where all the services are.
You can't just put something out of town because it's too far. We don't have cars and bus fare all the time. We don't have the resources to get to these places.
I think if they were to put it anywhere else, the shelter would be empty, as people are used to being homeless or sleeping on the streets or in the banks, right? So with it being so close, it's convenient for them, right? If it's not convenient, they're just going to continue to sleep in the banks or on the streets. It's what they're used to, right? They're used to survival mode.
The only way I was able to access these services and shelters is because they were in the downtown area. Fortunately, they were in places that I could get to and accessible to me.
where else would we put them? Like, why are we wanting to segregate people? We see that right now in Moose Jaw with the hospital. It's very hard for some of our people that are injured or have infections to be able to even access our emergency department because it is on the outskirts of town.
When you move services to the outskirts of a city, not only will people not go, all of the high-risk behaviors are going to amplify when somebody doesn't have something to eat, when somebody doesn't have a safe place to sleep.
Meal services and shelters for our community are essential services. They provide our folks with connection and hope, opportunities to connect with resources, and we can't really go around and access the services we need if we don't have the food in our bellies to fuel us.
I'd give anything to have a place to sleep at night and a meal so that I could actually have better thoughts on how to get out of my situation.
It was that shelter and meal that helped me get through every day. Like, I mean, I'd have supper at nighttime, I had a shower at nighttime. It's more welcoming.
When you put someone in a situation where they're walking alongside support workers, that's when you see change and recovery. Shelters are not a stopgap. What they are is a gateway into a continuum of support for people to go from being on the street to complete independence.
I needed a meal to get up every day, to have the energy to go and better myself.
Shelters and meal services are the only reason that I'm sitting here today. And they kept me alive at a time when I had no idea how to take care of myself, and they were there in order for me to stay alive and get to a place where I could become healthy again.
I heard that there was a bus coming in, that people are bringing buses in with homeless people, and that's just not the case. If somebody does come from out of town here, it's because this is where they were born and raised and they're coming home.
I was born here, I was raised here, I left in 2003 and then I came back.
I've been in Moose Jaw my whole life, and I've lived on the streets of Moose Jaw. I've lived in storage units in Moose Jaw. I've gotten to know a lot of the people who are homeless in Moose Jaw, and I've known them for as long as I can remember seeing them on the streets of Moose Jaw. I hardly ever see newcomers from out of town on the streets of Moose Jaw.
All of our guests that stay at Willow Lodge, they are from Moose Jaw. Their families are from Moose Jaw. Their co-workers in the past, their schoolmates, they're all from Moose Jaw. Moose Jaw is their community.
This isn't just a Moose Jaw issue. This myth is in every community where it's not people from our own town. It's not our own children that are experiencing this issue. It's always someone else. And what I call this is community disassociation. It's when a community closes their eyes to the issues around them and they say, this isn't our problem. I don't have to help. I don't have to contribute resources to help. It's almost like sometimes people treat homelessness like it's contagious. And if we just ignore it, it will just go away.
A lot of the people that are struggling with homelessness come from, residential schools, from poverty, from alcoholism with their parents. Don't judge a book by its cover. It's majority of the people I work with right now out on the streets are born and raised here.
How do you feel at home in your own city when there is nobody that listens to you, that just turns you away? How do you feel like you want to be a part of that community?
People do not choose to be homeless. If you had a choice between a bed and living on the streets, I'm sure nobody would choose to be homeless. But it is hard to get up and get a job when you have nowhere to shower. A lot of people aren't gonna, interview you for a job when, you've been living on the streets and you haven't showered in the morning, or, you smell or anything like that. It's a lot easier said than done.
Homeless people sometimes don't have a choice but to be homeless because nobody else is willing to give them a chance.
when I was 5 years old in kindergarten, when they asked me what I want to be when I grow up, I did not pick a homeless person. I did not put down a junkie. That's just not anyone's dream.
Homelessness is hard work. We see people come in here, they're exhausted. They've been searching for a place to sit. They've been looking for food. They're worried about when they're going to eat again. It is hard work. The calories that they use, that they burn just trying to find a safe place to be is really heartbreaking.
I never chose it. I went through a lot of hard times that people didn't notice what I was going through. I wasn't lazy. I went out because the resources were there, because I had food, water, and shelter. Every day I look forward to going down to the Warman Center and seeing my friends and just seeing them. And to have that cup of noodles or that cup of coffee right on. I'm going down there, I'm waking up, I'm gonna go down there, I'm gonna go, and then the day is mine. You know, I can do anything after that.
If you offered anyone a job here, they'd jump at the chance. They want to work, but they're up against, the community is looking at them, and they're up against myths like people choose to be homeless. They're lazy and should just find a job. So they don't give them the time. They don't give them the second chance.
Sometimes when you're working with people and they're not ready to move into a house, it's not because they choose to be homeless, it's because they've given up hope. At the end of the day, what we do as support workers is we open the curtains and we let the light in, and you watch hope grow in somebody, and you'll find that people will choose to be housed.
I've never had an addiction in my life, and I'm homeless, or I was. And if it wasn't for the shelter, I'd still be homeless.
A lot of people that come to Willow Lodge have addictions. They have struggles that come from trauma in their life, but that's not all of them. That is a little piece of them.
We see a variety of people that access the shelters, and some of those peoples would include elderly folks, persons with disabilities, young people that are transitioning out of youth homes. We see people with all sorts of varieties of life circumstances that have brought them into their shelters.
People that experience homelessness come from all different backgrounds. Mental health and addictions is one of them. There's also, cognitive stuff, there's disabilities, there's just, having a hard life. We see a lot of youth out on the streets because they don't have a great family to go back to. Some people just don't even have family. So everybody's situation to how they got there is very, very different. I know for me, I did struggle with drug addiction, and being homeless is the reason I used, right? To be able to deal with the conditions that I was in.
The drugs are just a coping mechanism because I couldn't find a place, because I didn't have the resources, because it was too far away, because there's no help.
Most people don't even begin an addiction until they've been on the street for some time. When they get to that place where they've embraced hopelessness, and when they feel the community doesn't want them and they're rejected, that's when people end up turning to substances.
Correlating being homeless and being dangerous is one of the biggest myths that you can hear out there. What I've experienced is people trying to give you the shirt off their back just so that you can do a little bit better than they're doing at that moment, just so that they know that they've made a difference in somebody else's life.
I was never dangerous. I know some of the homeless people that are some of the nicest guys, some of the nicest people. And I get to work with these people. I work with them every day. So I would know. And just because they look a certain way or they dress a certain way doesn't mean anything.
I work with a lot of people that are housing challenged, and I do not ever feel like I am in danger.
A large portion of the people that end up on the street end up there because they're not willing to do some of the things, selling drugs or running with gangs and stuff. The people that ended up on the street aren't those people because they're not willing to do those types of things to hurt other people.
It's very easy to blame all of the world's dangers on the unhoused population. People that are experiencing homelessness are actually a bigger target for being violated or being stolen from. They are not the dangerous ones. They are looking for shelter so that they can be safe.
I think people that are unhoused want to share their story, and I think if they get asked, they'll tell that to you. And people that are unhoused or homeless are not known to be violent with strangers, especially if you're just asking their story or you want to hear what's going on in their life.
My name is Franklin Christensen. I'm a person with lived experience. I now work at the shelter, Willow Lodge, in Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan. My adopted father, actually, he passed away. And it took me another 6 years to get through that grief. It affected me in ways that I didn't understand. So I turned to drugs, is what I did. It was a warming center. That's where I was still using, but I would go there daily, and I met some really good people there, right? So it was just nice to be able to go somewhere, to have somewhere to go and have a warm cup of coffee, or to get some rest, get out of the cold, get out of the heat. That's what ultimately got me off the street and be able to find a home. Because some of those people I now have the pleasure of working with and being a part of the community with. Being treated as homeless, they just didn't want me around, And it was hard to, because that wears on a person. I started my journey in recovery homeless. And then one of my friends reached out and asked me if I wanted to go to detox. And I said, well, I was like, yeah. And then she said, tomorrow? And that's how it all started. It did work in the end, right? But I still spent 5 months trying to get over the fact that I'm sober and I still can't find a place to live. So day in, day out, I kept on trudging through the barriers, and found myself a bike so I could bike in and back, finding food. But once I started to do these things on my own, I started to build my self-confidence went up, my self-esteem. I was able to do laundry, find some friends to do laundry. And then John Howard came in, and they offered me into a position into a My Place program. And 2 days before it snowed last year, I moved into my own apartment. Finally, after years of being homeless, a place to call my own. It was my home. I was so excited just to be able to have keys, to have laundry facilities, to write my address down on a piece of paper. I also was able to start volunteering after that. So I started volunteering down at the mission here in town. So, and I still do that, right? Through all of it, because they helped me through all of it. When I found a place and maintained it, John Howard stepped in again. And they offered me a job down at this new shelter. The 3 basic needs are food, clothing, and shelter, right? And I just do what was done for me, day in, day out. I still volunteer. I get to go to work now, and I get to come home, a home to call my own.
I'm Trevor. I'm an addict in recovery. I've been clean and sober and off the streets now for 2 years. I grew up in Moose Jaw. I grew up playing a lot of sports, enjoying my friends and school, and really had quite a good childhood. Played competitive hockey, and I was injured in hockey and wasn't able to play anymore. Had to get back surgery, and it was quite a long process in getting back to health. And in that time, I became very depressed, isolated myself from the people that cared about me, drinking alcohol regularly, and my first experience with drugs was marijuana. I thought at the time that's what I needed. I was able to numb all the pain of what I was experiencing and not really knowing how to cope with it at all.
When I first thought of addiction, I did think it was, someone that maybe was of a lower income, or that they had troubles with their finances, or what it led to. Personally, I never thought it would happen to my son. I had this thought that we had everything, things were going pretty good. Our family, we had a good situation, and it can happen.
In my later 20s was the first time I tried hard drugs. For me, I thought I was functioning. I thought, well, this is okay as long as I'm working, as long as I'm paying my rent and have food on the table, like things are okay. I really started developing some mental health issues. My parents, they were my support when I had nowhere else to go.
I felt that I was the mother warrior and that I could help and I could save him from addiction. Like, I thought, oh, we could beat this on our own. I tried very hard to look up different programs and things that I could maybe try and get him into, and really became the focus of my life was trying to save my son from the addiction and all that would happen. And little did I know that I was actually becoming more enabling and taking care of him so that he couldn't really function on his own and make his own decisions.
It took moving back in with them, working on my mental health, and then relapsing and choosing the drugs that they had to decide for their own health to not have me in their home anymore. And that's the first time I became homeless. I was in my mid-30s. I'd never been on the street. I didn't know how to survive on the street, and I was just ended up there. Something I thought would never happen. And it was the most horrible time of my life. Until you're that person homeless on the street, you can never understand what kind of life that is. And it isn't a life. It's just basically trying to survive another day every day.
I really feel that it is my son's, it was his responsibility to make the choices on his own, but it's very hard when you're addicted to a drug, and then it really affects your whole being, and without the community supports, like he wouldn't have known who to go to ask for help. It's just impossible. The very heart-wrenching as a mom and our whole family to not be able to be there and give the support that we felt he needed. But at the same time, we knew that in order for him to reach out to those community groups, that he had to do it on his own.
There was emergency services, which were helpful, and it was somewhere where I could get something to eat and rest for a while, get out of the elements, not freeze to death. And but it was the people that worked in those places that were able to get me in contact with other supports, and it was kind of like a network of supports that led me to realizing that I didn't want to be on the street and that I didn't want to use drugs anymore. Through some other groups in the community that made housing available or helped me to get a home, that was the only way I was able to do it. I was able to go to a treatment center, and it changed my life. I guess the perspective I came at it from this time, I had been to treatment many times, but after being humbled by the streets, I really have an appreciation for what I do have now.
I'm so thankful that all those supports were there and that he found, you know, people that he could trust, and it really made a difference in his life, and he had to do it on his own.
Now I truly feel like I have a home to call my own because of all the support that I've gotten from people that I didn't even know that extended a helping hand when I needed it. I'm forever grateful for the opportunities I've been given by people who took the time to just care. The greatest gift of it all is that I have 3 beautiful daughters that now have their dad back, and I have them back. So, yeah.